Canada has always chosen to participate in expos, especially those hosted by Japan. Starting in Expo Osaka 1970, followed by 2005 in Aichi, and also the specialized expos, for example, 1985 Scuba. Japan is a valued partner for Canada, especially with the launch of our Indo-Pacific strategy. But even before that, for close to 100 years of diplomatic relations, Japan and Canada have had such close ties. So it was not a difficult decision to come back to Expo 2025 Osaka. I think the timing of this expo was particularly poignant, being the first after the coronavirus. It was, I think, a call to action for the globe to come back together, face to face, after having been away from each other for so long. These expos have always been the perfect platform for nation branding and for public diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, and people-to-people ties. And what better way to bring the world back together after COVID than to gather here, this time once again in Osaka, for the World's Expo. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement that Canada's Pavilion here has been an award-winning one. I think even before we received these lovely awards, we already felt that this was a winning expo for us, and I think for our fellow international participants. The premise of, or the overarching theme of designing a future sustainable society is one that we all wanted to live up to. And the idea of some sub-themes such as connecting lives, saving lives, and empowering lives gave us a framework, that and the thematic weeks as well, to work with. We were delighted when the Expo Association offered us this beautiful and well-located plot that we were on. And it had meaning for us as well. It's a large plot, like Canada is large. And we wanted to make sure that the design of the site and the architecture was open and welcoming, just like Canada is. We were also pleased that this pavilion is situated in the Empowering Lives zone, because that's very much what Canada is committed to doing. And we wanted our own theme to not only reflect the overarching theme, but live up to the address that we were given here at Expo. We looked at our theme in 1970 at Osaka Expo, and it was discovery. It's when we really wanted the world to discover Canada, especially after our very successful Montreal 1967 Expo. And so we thought, what about rediscovery for this expo? But we didn't feel that it was action-oriented enough or reflective enough of that sustainability theme that we were after. So we came up with regeneration, SAIC. And we liked that theme because it has multiple layers, levels, and interpretations, just like our very diverse Canada does as well. It's as much about rewinding to the successful Expo in 1970 as it is going back to the best practices and lessons learned and wisdom, whether it be of our Indigenous peoples or past generations, and looking at what solutions they were already building on, how they were building on Canada's strengths of creativity and diversity, and how we might use some of those lessons to inspire and equip and empower the next generation, Sugi no Seidai, how we could really equip them. So we wanted to focus on youth empowerment. We wanted to think about the next generation. We wanted to be forward-leading. And we did that in a number of ways. First of all, the architectural team took the theme of regeneration and they presented this icy structure. And at first glance, you think it is blocks of ice, which it is. You think of perhaps Canada's famous winters, but in fact, it's our springtime. And in the spring, with the warmth and the power of the natural forces, the frozen rivers that crisscross Canada actually break up, the ice breaks up into these dramatic ice formations. And it was to suggest not only the beauty of Canada's four seasons, but what happens beyond spring, which is hope and breaking of ice and breaking through with new ideas. And it's about renaissance and renewal. And that's how we wanted to reflect in the architecture, our regeneration theme. And then our creative team also looked at regeneration as the undercurrent for the storytelling and chose to use those icy formations on an imaginary Canadian river to show the many different layers and levels, perspectives, people, landscape of Canada, but in a very innovative and creative way using augmented reality. So even the idea of taking some of Canada's iconic images and landscapes, such as Anne of Green Gables and her green-roofed house, or Niagara Falls, our Rocky Mountains, the Aurora, or Canada's North. Even though those are perhaps well-loved images of Canada, we wanted to show the strength of Canada's creativity by equipping each visitor with almost a magic mirror in which they could see some of the different layers of Canada. It was meant to be and is a poetic journey, an impressionistic journey through Canada. And I think even just the manner in which it's done, the format and the story did indeed inspire visitors to think about Canada in a different way, in a new way, and a fresh way. And that's how we wanted to bring regeneration to life. But beyond our award-winning exhibit, we also had 6 months of dynamic programming. We had more than 150 Canadian artists of all genres and disciplines come here to Expo, for some their first time in Japan, and to demonstrate Canada's rich cultural diversity. Everything from street and break dancing to classical music to our famous iconic jazz music and in between. We also welcomed delegations from across Canada, our provinces and territories, from the West British Columbia days to the East Atlantic Canada days, where they brought their own expertise and interest to connect with Japanese counterparts. And we also were delighted to use our collaboration spaces to regenerate relationships, some with long-standing friendship associations or twin and sister city relationships. This was a place to bring together old friends and to meet new ones and to really generate a new and more contemporary view of Canada, especially here in Japan. In fact, the idea of augmented reality or using a tablet was proposed by our artistic director, Robert Lepage. And he begins with the device even before the storyline. And I must say that there were several weeks of discussions as to whether this was the right approach or not. Augmented reality, our concern was it fresh enough? Was it innovative enough? Because there's a lot of augmented reality that appears in exhibits and other uses. And the idea of each visitor getting a tablet, that too, my reaction was, that doesn't feel like an expo experience, because expos, especially here in Japan, are usually experienced in a group setting. So having an individual journey at Expo, how would that work? So we had many weeks, if not months, of discussions. Was this going to be the right approach? The other sort of proposal or novelty was not to have a guided path to go to, but that visitors could actually choose their own path and their own direction and their own pace at which they could go. And there too, I thought, having been at Expo 2005, Aichi Expo, I understand expos, or so I thought, and the visitor journey and what it would be here. So he really stretched us and challenged us to think in new ways. But he's such a visionary that we said, we will go with this and let's try it and let's push it. Where it got really exciting was when the creative team teamed up with a school, a technology school in Montreal, ETS, École Technique Supérieure, in Montreal, who was using augmented reality, researching augmented reality for different purposes, such as medical and surgery. And they teamed up with the professor and these young minds who worked together with the creative team to stretch each other and push each other to see just how creative they could be with this device of augmented reality. And the results themselves were quite magical. Then it was also designing choosing which images or which icons or which elements would be included as well from an artistic perspective, but also from a very inclusive perspective, and one that might begin to illustrate the vastness and the diversity and the regional bounty of our country. And the device itself, we talked about, what the case should look like, how it should be manipulated, and how we could ensure that it would be the quality experience it was. And it's as much about the technology, though, as it is about the artistry. It's the creation of these beautiful ice monoliths, these beautiful ice formations. It's the lighting that was so important to illuminate them from below into a large, dark setting. It was the height of the Rocky Mountains and the megapolis, which demonstrates Canada's urban creativity and diversity. And it was also the soundscape as well. Not only through the tablet could you hear everything from a dog sled team barking to water flowing, but there was a commissioned piece, a beautiful soundscape that was commissioned and produced by Chris Dirksen, who's a cellist and composer, Indigenous cellist and composer. And so it was all of these multifacets of the flow, the technology, the artistry, and the creativity that came together to tell this story in a very powerful way. We were so delighted at how well received it was. In fact, we were surprised at how long people stayed in the visitor journey, that it was like a scavenger hunt, mystery hunt mitai. It really was that they wanted to see every element of this and discover. It was whimsical, it was surprising, it was delightful, it was enchanting. Those are some of the words that we heard. Most often, though, it was sugoi, sugoi, sugoi. Those are the considerations that went into the evolution of the Canada Pavilion exhibit. For Japan, we knew that it was going to be at least 90% of Japanese visitors. And so we had a good foundation and a good base to work from there. And I think we all strive to make sure that our exhibits and what we're presenting is universally appealing, that there will be something for everyone there. But there's also this idea of being able to transcend generations and make it just as whimsical or delightful as it is for a small child or a school child, which we had many, many school children visiting, to a family visitor, to a couple visiting, and even perhaps visiting with their seniors group as well. We thought about universal accessibility. We thought about multilingual approach to this. And in fact, we're one of the few pavilions where there was zero text. There was nothing written about it. Again, we wanted to have a feeling, and we wanted to make it very poetic and impressionistic, that you would come away with feeling even refreshed. We thought about the temperature in the room, not only to have these icy formations that might make you feel cooler in the incredible heat of August here in Osaka, but actually to think about the cool sensation, so that it was not only cool suzushi, but cool kakoi as well. So we thought about the mobility of the visitor. We thought about how they can access the devices, and that we had things low down on each of the ice formations, but you could look way up as well. And we were delighted to find that indeed Ba-chan mo, from grandma to right down to the grandchild, there was something appealing and delightful and inspiring about what we were presenting them. So it was to especially make sure that we were offering something for the Japanese visitors that would resonate with them, that they would understand, if they hadn't already visited or studied in Canada, that they might have heard about the vastness of our country, of course, and our diversity of our country. They might have known a little bit about the indigenous festivals or music. Of course, they might know about our skating, but our fabulous urban centers too. So it was trying to ensure we had something that resonated with the entire family, extended family of visitors that might come, that might join us here. And again, the response was very enthusiastic, and we were delighted to see that our intentions were indeed well aligned with what their expectations were. If I might just add on to that, while the fabulous augmented reality and the visitor journey really delighted visitors, we also wanted to add some very analog elements and traditional elements to our visitor experience. And that included our attendants, our hosting staff. For generations now, we have been selecting Canadians, usually young Canadians, to come and represent their country here. And once again, we had close to 50 Canadians who every day greeted, welcomed, chatted with, danced with, sang with our visitors. And we know from past expos and our visitor surveys, and it was validated again this time, that one of the most memorable elements for visitors, it's either, number one, the visitor experience, or number one, speaking with real Canadians. And we wanted that very, as I say, sort of analog, traditional approach and experience included. And even when you exited this, wonderful exhibit, you came out into what we called our farewell gallery, where we had our stamping station, of course. We had our mascot, Parka-chan, a beaver mascot. But we just had beautiful images of Canada because we knew the appeal of taking photos. We had some lovely chairs, typical iconic red Muskoka chairs that might remind you of visiting a national park in Canada. And out front, we had also the opportunity to perhaps taste a little bit of Canada with a culinary demonstration, or see some fabulous talent on our stage as well. So it was very much about an approachable, accessible, in some ways traditional approach to really having our visitors here experience Canada in a very meaningful, relevant, fun, innovative way. It was very important when we were designing the pavilion that we include a stage in our design and our visitor experience. We borrowed that idea from our very successful pavilion in 1970, Osaka Expo as well. We've had other stages, but we wanted to have a stage, and we wanted to make it a bit of a gathering place as well, where we could bring a lot of visitors together. And it was important that we use it in an incredibly diverse way to demonstrate not only that rich cultural diversity, but to say that it's music and dance and theater, yes, but also to use it for film projections, to use it to have our daily projection of an Anne Shirley anime as well, to use it for culinary demonstrations. Again, just to demonstrate just how rich and diverse Canada is in terms of talent. But we also wanted to reserve spaces for artists on all of the pop-up stages. And I believe that Canada was probably the most ambitious of all of the pavilions in making those reservations. And there too, it wasn't just about if you come to the Canada Pavilion, you will experience some Canada. We wanted to offer some of Canada out to the rest of the Expo site as well. And that turned out to be incredibly powerful for the artists themselves to be able to experience the absolutely fabulous and generous audiences that are here in Japan and specifically at Expo. The results were almost immediate in terms of fan reaction. The fact that they generated fans and followers immediately on site asking for autographs and photos, but also following them as well. And for us, that was mission accomplished, to introduce Canadian talent for them perhaps to have an expanded career here in Japan, but also just to introduce to Japanese audiences and international audiences here at Expo just how talented Canadians are in so many genres. So as I say, it was the outcome or the output was almost immediate. It's really exciting to think of what will be to come in terms of next steps for these artists and the visitors. One other note was that when we were finalizing the design on site, the stage was 2 steps up, and we added some height to the stage because it allowed the artist to see the people on the ring, and it allowed the visitors on the ring to see the stage. And that was just incredibly heartwarming for us all to be able to know that the sounds and music and presentations that the artists were offering were being viewed by an even broader audience than what we were able to gather. It was as much about the Canadian artists, though, as it was about some of the creative collaborations we were able to do, mostly with Japanese audience and some here within the Expo family. So having the Kuriange Band, the Jellyfish Pavilion with Sachiko Nakajima, perform with Kelly Badeau and her fabulous band was just something that could only happen in an Expo. To have young musicians and choirs come, El Sistema from Tokyo, we had perform. We had young local choirs and bands as well, to give them an opportunity to experience Canada, even if it was just our Canada Pavilion. To have taiko drummers from Hiroshima perform for our street dancers from Montreal and Toronto. Those were just magical co-creations and collaborations that we couldn't really have dreamt up in advance. Many of them were spontaneous, and because of this 6-month conversation we'd been having, some great ideas were sparked, and that was what really made the investment in our stage that much more meaningful. It was a great return on it. So that was a powerful part of Canada's participation. Indeed, gender equality as one of the Sustainable Development Goals was clearly a cross-cutting theme for us and an objective to demonstrate that for Canada, this is a commitment that our society is built around this, and we had plenty of opportunity that we seized to make sure that our team composition was gender balanced, that we have some amazing culinary team members, and the team was balanced, our hosting staff, Even the architect lead, it was a woman from Montreal, Marilyn Thibault. We also had our Japanese site construction crew that was very feminine fueled and women powered as well. Programmatically, we looked for any and all opportunity to make sure that we were showcasing women entrepreneurs, that we had an Indigenous women's-led trade delegation as well. We connected with women here in the Kansai and beyond to make sure that we were providing opportunities for exchange and co-inspiration. But I think probably what illustrates best our desire to illustrate and demonstrate Canada's commitment was teaming up with the Women's Pavilion in collaboration with Cartier. Canada was the first to approach them to say bravo for returning. I personally had a chance to see the Women's Pavilion in Dubai, Expo 2020, and I knew just what a powerful platform it was. And many of us encouraged the Expo Association to repeat that successful undertaking. So we were delighted when the Women's Pavilion was back. We approached them and said, if you're thinking of doing joint programming, we would love to partner with you. And we came up with the idea of a monthly series of talk sessions, and that we would be regular visitors and regular partners. It was just lovely that even geographically, we were very close. They're in our neighborhood here in the Empowering Lives Zone. And so the format was talk sessions, but each month was inspired by the theme week that we would be falling within, or the fact that we might have some incredible women visiting who we could have a conversation with and share as well. The formula allowed for about 60 general public to participate in this talk session, and another 20 or 30 invited guests. So every month it was surprising as to who would come and who would join the conversation and what kind of questions that they would have. But in the end, as we realized after we did 7 sessions, that we actually had a conversation over the entire Expo period. And we could see common themes and threads, yes, of challenges from sticky floors to glass ceilings, but also some really inspiring stories that showed that there is still a lot of work to be done when it comes to gender balance, but there's some excellent examples, role models, and certainly a lot of will and interest to move the needle on gender equality. We also were able to host here a number of important discussions, such as during Ukraine's National Day, when we had a women's breakfast to allow the Ukrainian Minister of Communications and Culture to talk about the challenges of women during wartime, or even creativity during wartime, and also participated on other panel discussions as well with fellow power women across the Expo site. We created our own network of women commissioners general so that we could stay connected and perhaps encourage other empowered and inspiring women across the Expo site to share information and share stories. And I think that in our Regeneration series at the Women's Pavilion, it's something that we have begun that hopefully will have a life afterwards. And we'll look to see how we can take some of that energy, some of those stories, and even some of that network, and continue that conversation here in Japan. So that's one of the lovely outcomes, I think, of having this strength, but also this spotlight on gender equality. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we hope that we raised awareness, if not understanding, about the importance of role models and really starting within your own community to make sure that we're much more balanced than we currently are. I think the role that Canada played at this expo was one of a convening role and one of a collaborating role. Even just the design of our site, which we had our pavilion build start from the back to leave us a wide open plaza at the front of our pavilion, was meant to be open for collaboration and partnership and friendship. It was meant to reflect Canada as an open and welcoming country. And we extended early on the invitation, whether it be to other women here at Expo to join a group together, whether it be working with the other pavilions, the thematic pavilions here, offering our stage, offering our conference room for film screenings. It was about bringing people together to really take full advantage of this important and unique global conversation that we have had over the last 6 months. We've also had a lot of fun. Our team has their own many diverse connections, whether it was our culinary team teaming up with another pavilion to teach each other some different dishes, our traditional tourtière meat pie or German sausages, whether it was artists performing together, of course, hosting staff getting together with other pavilions as well. It's been one of kinship, it's been one of collaboration and co-creation as well. And that's been, I think, an important and needed role. At times, I think, too, even a leadership role in trying to rally support for advocacy, for bringing different voices and perspectives together. And again, that's something that's very much a Canadian way of doing things. So that's been our sort of self-appointed role. And I think in terms of legacy, I like to think that those bridges that we strengthened and those networks that we reinforced and regenerated, that those will be the best legacy of Expo 2025 Osaka. That the conversations that we held here, that the panel discussions, the symposia, that especially when it came to the youth groups, where they got to meet other budding entrepreneurs, or they got to exchange with other performers or experts in creative industries, for example, that they, as the next generation, that they'll take so much from this expo, and they'll perhaps remember that some of this magic happened in the Canada Pavilion collaboration spaces. But that's the I think the true legacy of this expo. We'll try again to take some of these successful programs that we've built here, whether it was about around the Indigenous connections or the creative industries or culture or women's empowerment, and try to see if we can't repurpose them either here in Japan, or would it be an appropriate template for some of our other big events, or even for our embassies or consulates abroad. We'll look at programmatic legacy. We'll look at some physical legacy as well to see how we can reuse and repurpose, regenerate, and find some of the iconic elements of the Canada Pavilion that might stay here in Japan, or find another good home. I have been so fortunate to have a long story with Japan, a long love story with Japan, and I must say that my heart belongs to Miyagi-ken, to Sendai, because that was my first introduction to Japan as a very young teacher on the JET program. And Aichi Expo was my next experience before joining the diplomatic corps and working at the Canada Embassy to represent Canada there. So Osaka Expo 2025 is somewhat like coming full circle for me to return to Japan, this time for an expo. I have not had a chance to see much of Kansai and Osaka on this trip because we have been so focused here. at the expo itself. I think we got a wonderful front row seat to the best of Japan in terms of the wonderful reaction from visitors, how interested and enthusiastic and passionate and emotional they are about being able to travel the world here on one expo site. And that they delight so much in the food and the culture and learning. So while I didn't get a chance to explore much of the Kansai over the course of these very busy 6-8 months, I think that we got a front row seat to the best of Japan and the millions of visitors who so energetically, patiently, passionately visited each of our pavilions. And I think it was our own little ecosystem here, but that was a reflection of the people of Japan who have such an appetite for wanting to discover and learn more about world cultures, world foods. This real thirst for learning more and seeing more and experiencing more. And just the artists would say the best audiences in the world were those audiences that they experienced here at Expo. And our frontline, our attendants, our hosting staff would as well be so inspired by the reactions of the visitors, even though they may have been waiting in line for hours and hours. So I think that we saw, as I say, the best of Japan, even if I couldn't leave the Umeshima very often. It was like getting that front row seat. So again, it was this wonderful reminder of why I personally love Japan so much, and why I think there's such strong friendship between Canada and Japan, is we share so many values, we share so many strengths and beliefs as well, and we saw the best of that over the course of the last 6 months. Perhaps as a final comment would be one of thanks and congratulations to Japan for once again hosting such a successful Expo. I feel like Japan is a super host when it comes to Expo, and yet each one has had its own unique identity and flavor. Challenges, yes, but opportunities. And given the geopolitical times and the current global instability that we're all witnessing and experiencing, the timing of this expo couldn't have been more needed or meaningful, I think, that for Japan to bring the world together. And in truly an expression of unity in diversity. And so congratulations to Japan for the success of this, but thank you for setting the table for us to come together around this table and at this table for this important global dialogue and discussion. And I think in particular, just genuine appreciation to the visitors who came and showed and shared their love and their love for Canada. It was indeed heartwarming every moment and every step and every day at this expo. So I would just say from my heart, o kini.